Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Thursday. Thank God. Shabbos is almost here. Let's light up the darkness. Oh, why does Facebook do that? Here we go. Who's in the house? Stephen in New Hampshire, Nancy in North Carolina, Ryan in Florida, Leona in Southern Illinois, Bella in Florida, Melissa in Great Neck, and it's skipping on me again. Come on. Bella in Florida, Melissa in Great Neck, Peggy in Colorado, Paula in Chicago, Sandy, Michigan is in the house, Sharon is in New Jersey, Belle in Texas, John in Maine, Bill in mid-Missouri. Over on the YouTube side, Marjorie checking in from Georgia. And this is Glenn.
Hi.
Glenn is our editor on the movie. He is cutting it and doing a great job. But he understands that every night at 6 p.m., I got to turn the chair over this way and engage with our class. It's such a wonderful time of the day. All right, so where are we holding? We're in Tractate Sotah, the 18th volume of the Talmud. Today, opening chapter 3, Mishna 1 of chapter 3. These are generally speaking the laws of the suspected adulteress. And now as we enter chapter 3, we're still in the actual ritual as it was conducted in the Holy Temple. When a husband and wife came and he had warned her not to seclude herself with a particular man. In the presence of witnesses, he did that, and she secluded herself with that man anyway, and witnesses saw that. So then the husband and wife became prohibited to each other and will remain prohibited to each other unless she drinks the bitter water, right? So in chapter 2, we learn much more about the bitter water, this mixture of water from a spring that was available on the Temple Mount, right in the temple when it was standing in Jerusalem, some dust that came from the floor that was underneath a panel in the sanctuary floor, and then the words, right? Certain words, words from certain verses of this whole passage of the Sotah in the Torah, which are written on a parchment, a single parchment, in dissolving ink, right? An ink made from soot, that when the parchment goes into the water, the ink completely dissolves. And this is the bitter water. And there's actually one more ingredient in the bitter water, as we'll learn today. And then, if she's guilty, if she actually committed the adultery, we warn her, if you committed the adultery, don't drink the water. It will kill you. Better you should admit it. You and your husband will have to divorce, but you'll live, right? If you committed the adultery and drink the water, you will die. If you're innocent, however, drink the water. You'll be proven innocent, and then the husband and wife will be permitted to each other again. And hopefully they can put this episode behind them and start building a harmonious household, one fit for children. All right, we enter chapter 3, and we're getting deeper into the particulars of the ritual itself. Now, the relevant verses that are going to apply in this chapter are Numbers chapter 5, verses 24 through 28. And he shall make the woman drink the water. He, the priest, shall make the woman drink. I'm just reading from the Torah here. Shall make the woman drink the water of bitterness that causes the curse. The water that causes the curse shall enter into her and become bitter. And the priest shall take the meal offering of jealousy out of the woman's hand, and shall wave the meal offering before the Lord, and bring it unto the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the meal offering as the memorial part of it, and burn it upon the altar. And afterward he shall make the woman drink the water. And he shall make her drink the water, and then it shall come to pass, if she is defiled, meaning if she committed adultery, if she is defiled and acted unfaithfully against her husband, that the water that causes the curse shall enter into her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thighs shall fall away, and the woman shall be a curse among her people. And if the woman were not defiled, but she is untainted, then she shall be cleared and shall conceive seed, right? She'll get pregnant. So once the husband and wife reunite, then they're at peace again. The interesting thing about that passage, as the conclusion of these verses, she shall conceive and bear seed, is, well, what if they were having trouble having children before? Is she going to become, or are they as a couple going to become more fertile now after having been through this terrible ordeal? Perhaps. We'll come to that later. At any rate, here we are, chapter 3, Mishnah number 1. Our daf is Yud Tes, page 19. Mishnah number 1. He would take her meal offering out of the Egyptian wicker basket made of palm leaves in which it was lying, and would put it in a service vessel and then place it on her hand. And the priest would then place his hand underneath hers and wave it together with her. The priest waved it and brought it near the southwest corner of the altar, removed a handful from it, and burned the handful. And the remainder was eaten by the priests, right? The remainder of this meal offering, some of it burned, the rest could be eaten by priests. It's not eaten by her, the owner, the person who brought the offering, because this is a sin offering, not a peace offering. And the priest would force the woman to drink the bitter water of a sotah, and afterward he would sacrifice her meal offering. And Rabbi Shimon says the priest would sacrifice her meal offering, and afterward he would force her to drink, as it is stated, and the priest shall take a handful of the meal offering as the memorial part of it, and burn it upon the altar, and afterward he shall make the woman drink the water. Numbers 5:26. But Rabbi Shimon concedes that if the priest first forced her to drink and afterward he sacrificed her meal offering, it is still valid. That's Mishnah number 1. Here's the Gemara. Rabbi Elazar said to Rabbi Yoshiah of his generation, there were other Rabbi Yoshias, but it's the Rabbi Yoshiah or Yoshia? Hold on a second. Yeah, Yoshia. So there were other Rabbi Yoshias, but the Rabbi Yoshia of his generation is whom Rabbi Elazar was speaking to. And says Rabbi Elazar, you shall not sit on your feet until you explain this matter to me. From where is it derived that the meal offering of a sotah requires waving? When he says, you shall not sit on your feet until you explain this to me, that means, well, this is obvious to you, but it's not obvious to me, so please walk me through this. So from where is it derived that the meal offering of a sotah requires waving, right? So certain offerings are waved before they are offered, and other offerings are not. So why is the meal offering of a sotah one which requires waving? And the Gemara expresses surprise at the question. From where do we derive this? It is explicitly written in the Torah with regard to the meal offering of a sotah, and the priest shall take the meal offering of jealousy out of the woman's hand and shall wave the meal offering before the Lord and bring it unto the altar. Numbers 5:25. So rather, the question is as follows. From where do we derive that the waving is performed by the owner, i.e. the woman, and not only by the priest? It sounds like in the Torah, he takes the what is a meal offering? In this case, we learn that it's a barley, right? It's barley flour. Most meal offerings are wheat. But in the case of the sotah, right, we derived in the last few days that this was sort of animal food because of her very inappropriate behavior in secluding herself with this man she was warned not to. So the question is, since the Torah says in the sotah ritual, the priest takes the meal offering from her, and the priest waves it, why does the Mishnah now say that the priest puts his hands under the woman's hands and they wave it together? That seems to contradict what's written in the Torah. So Rabbi Yoshia answered, this is derived by means of a verbal analogy between the term hand, written here, and hand from the peace offering, right? Peace offerings are waved. And it is written here with regard to the meal offering of a sotah, and the priest shall take the meal offering of jealousy out of the woman's hand. And it is written there with regard to a peace offering, he that offers his peace offerings unto the Lord, his own hands shall bring the offerings, that the breast may be waved before the Lord. Now, just as here, in the case of the sotah, the priest waves the offering, so too there in the case of the peace offering, the priest waves the offering. And just as there in the case of the peace offering, the owner waves the offering along with the priest, so too here in the case of the Sotah, the owner waves the offering along with the priest. And how is this accomplished? The priest places his hand beneath the hands of the owner and then waves the offering with the owner. And now you should have a little bell going off. Wait a minute. Whoa. Like if you think about, Orthodox Jews, like Orthodox Jewish men who are shomer negiah, meaning that they will not touch a woman, right? They will not touch a woman who's not their wife, or their mom or their daughter. It's just part of, guarding one's body. In other words, avoiding inappropriate behavior at all costs. That somebody who is, somebody who is pious, a Jewish man who is pious will not be, hugging or squeezing or touching or really even shaking hands with a woman who is not his wife. Kind of in our neighborhood, in my world, it's something like we often talk about, like, because, people in our community understand that you leave our community and you're interacting with Jews who are not Orthodox or with non-Jews. They don't know that. It's the most normal thing in the world for men and women to shake hands in a business context. So what happens if you're an Orthodox man and a woman just extends her hand to you, it would seem very impolite to say, I'm sorry, I can't shake hands with you. And it's kind of context dependent and person and individual dependent. Sometimes a guy will, from our world will just say, excuse me, it's our tradition that we don't touch women who are not our wives. Please understand. Some guys will just shake hands so as not to cause discomfort or embarrassment to the woman who extended her hands to shake hands. At any rate, when we look at this passage here, this was well within the observant religious world when the temple was standing. And somebody is bringing an offering to the holy temple where the priests, rule the place, as it were. So there's no awkwardness if a priest would say, yeah, we don't touch the hands of, women in this place. Any women that are not very close relatives, right? Even our cousins, we don't shake hands with them. So now the priest is going to put his hands on the hands of this woman who's unrelated to him and who is in fact a suspected adulteress. Isn't that kind of odd and surprising? So there's a note about that. In the Jerusalem Talmud, it is asked, why is it not improper for the priest to touch the woman's hand? And the conclusion is that since this was only for a short time, there's no reason for concern lest the priest's desire be stimulated. And some explain that the priest did not actually touch her. His hands held the vessel lower down than her hands and did not touch her hands directly. So perhaps he did touch, but in this context, it was so, not a flirtatious scenario. Like it's there's an awe to everybody who's present at the temple and in this ritual, and nobody is thinking that this is a flirtatious moment. Quite the contrary, right? Where you're bringing a sotah to drink the bitter water. It's sort of the least sexy moment imaginable, if you will. Okay, so at any rate, that's how they would do waving the meal offering before the ritual goes forward. Now, the Mishna states, the priest waved it and brought it near to the southwest corner of the altar, removed a handful from it, and burned the handful. Yet, the continuation of the Mishna states, the priest would force the woman to drink, and afterward he would sacrifice her meal offering. So which is it? Does he offer the meal offering and then she drinks, or does she drink and then the priest offers the meal offering? So the Gemara asks, did the Mishnah state in the previous phrase that the offering was already sacrificed? And the Gemara answers, this is what the Mishnah is saying. What was the sacrificial order of meal offerings in general? The priest waved the meal offering and brought it near to the southwest corner of the altar, removed a handful from it, and burned the handful, and then the remainder was eaten by the priests. And as for the correct order for sacrificing the meal offering of the Sotah, and forcing her to drink, this itself is a matter about which Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis, the majority, disagree. As the rabbis hold that the priest would force the woman to drink, and afterwards he would sacrifice the meal offering. And Rabbi Shimon holds that the priest would sacrifice her meal offering, and afterward he would force her to drink, as it is stated, and the priest shall take the handful of the meal offering as a memorial and burn it on the altar, and afterward he shall make the woman drink. Where did this end up? It is stated in the Jerusalem... Oh, no, that's a note. The law... So the law. The halakha came out like this. The priest first forces the woman to drink the bitter water, and afterward he sacrifices the meal offering, which is, as the majority held, an opposite of what Rabbi Shimon said, and opposite of what the text seems to imply, because they were taking this law in the context of the general procedures of how offerings were brought in the temple. Now the Mishna states, but Rabbi Shimon concedes that if the priest first forced her to drink and afterwards sacrificed her meal offering, the offering is still valid. Now the sages taught, what is the meaning when the verse states after the sacrifice of the meal offering, and he shall make her drink the water? But isn't it already stated, and he shall make the woman drink the water of bitterness that causes the curse, 3 verses earlier? So the Baraisa answers, the repetition teaches that, right, in this passage, right, when I read to you the verses that are relevant to this section of the ritual, it states that she shall drink the water 3 times. Why this repetition? So the sages are going to learn out different aspects of the law from the repetition. It's not needless repetition. It never is when there's repetition in the Torah. So the Bryce answers, the repetition teaches that if the scroll was already erased, and then the woman says, I will not drink, she is forced, me'arerin, to drink against her will. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shimon says, what is the meaning when the verse states, and the priest shall take a handful of the meal offering as the memorial part and burn on the altar, and afterward he shall make the woman drink? But isn't it stated previously, and he shall make the woman drink? So rather, this verse indicates that the Sotah is given the bitter water only after all the actions that are stated above are performed, meaning erasing the scroll in the water, sacrificing the meal offering, and administering the oath to her, as we learned yesterday. If you are guilty and you drink this water, the curse will come upon you. If you are innocent, then the water will prove it for you. And she says, Amen, Amen. Right, so all of that has to be done before she drinks the water, says Rabbi Shimon. Therefore, this verse teaches that 3 matters preclude her from drinking. She does not drink until the handful of the meal offering is sacrificed, and she does not drink until the scroll is erased in the water, and she does not drink until she accepts the oath upon herself. And the Gemara elaborates, she does not drink until the handful is sacrificed. So Rabbi Shimon conforms to his line of reasoning stated earlier, as he says that the priest sacrifices her meal offering and afterward forces her to drink. Now the Gemara questions the second condition. She does not drink until the scroll is erased. Why did the Baraisa need to state this? But what could he give her to drink if the scroll has not yet been erased in the water, right? The water is not the bitter water until it contains the water, the dust from the floor, and the ink of these verses written on a parchment that is then put in the water and it dissolves into the water. So if the ink has not been dissolved into the water, how could she drink the water? Obviously she can't drink the water. Why does Rabbi Shimon need to tell us this? Why would the Torah need to tell us this according to Rabbi Shimon's view? And Rav Ashi answers, no, this law is necessary for an instance where the scroll was erased, but the impression of the ink is still discernible on the parchment, meaning it wasn't fully erased, right? The ink didn't fully dissolve and disappear from the parchment. In that case, the woman does not drink until the scroll is totally erased. And the Gemara discusses the third condition. She does not drink until she accepts the oath upon herself. So one might infer from this statement that it is only that she does not drink before she accepts the oath. However, the scroll is written for her before she accepts the oath. But didn't Rava say with regard to a scroll of a Sotah that was written before she accepted the oath upon herself that whoever wrote it did nothing? And the scroll is rendered invalid, right? Remember, the reasoning for this was we don't want her to change her mind and say, you know what, I don't want to do this. And we don't want her to do that, to change her mind after God's name was written on a piece of paper and then erased when it was dissolved in the water. We would prefer that if she's going to, halt the procedure and just admit that she's guilty, that she do that before they write the scroll for her. Right, so that would be a reason not to invert that order. Right, so didn't Rava say with regard to a scroll of a Sotah that was written before she accepted the oath, he did nothing. We wanted to accept the oath and then they write the scroll. That should be the order. And if they invert the order, the scroll is rendered unfit according to Rava. So the Gemara asks, with regard to what do the rabbis and Rabbi Shimon disagree in our Mishnah? The Gemara answers 3 verses are written which pertain to the drinking of the bitter water, the drinking itself. The first occurrence of the term is Numbers 5:24, and he shall make the woman drink. Then in Numbers 5:26, and afterward he shall make the woman drink the water. And then Numbers 5:27, and he shall make her drink. Right? 3 times it's stated. So the rabbis hold that the first occurrence of the term, and he shall make the woman drink, is written to teach the law itself, i.e. that the priest first forces her to drink and afterward sacrifices her meal offering. The second instance, where it says, and afterward he shall make her drink, he shall make the woman drink. The second instance, this is necessary to teach that as long as the impression of the writing is still discernible, right, the ink hasn't fully dissolved off the parchment, the Sotah is not given the bitter water to drink. And the third instance of, the Torah saying in Numbers 5:27 that he shall make her drink, that third repetition teaches that if the scroll was erased and then the woman says, I will not drink, she is forced to drink against her will, right? Because she said, I'm going to drink it, I swear I'm going to drink it. She swore. And then, they erase God's name into the water, and then she says, you know what, I'm not going to drink it. So at this point, they erase God's name for her, and she swore that she was going to drink it. Are we going to let her back out now? Yes or no? What do you think? Right? So one view that you've just heard is, no, at this point, it's too late to back out. She has to drink it. But is that what it really means? Let's see. Now, the Gemara explains the rabbi's opinion. And the rabbis would respond to Rabbi Shimon that the verse does not begin the discussion with a law that is applicable only after the fact, and therefore the initial mention of the drinking is referring to the proper time for the ritual. And the Gemara asks, but does Rabbi Akiva in fact hold that the woman is forced to drink against her will? But isn't it taught in a Baraisa, Tosefta 2:3, that Rabbi Yehuda says, a hook, a kelebus made of iron, is forcibly placed into her mouth so that if the scroll was erased and then she said, I will not drink, then we force her to drink against her will, right? So you actually put a hook in her mouth and open her mouth and then put that water into her because it's too late for her to change her mind. And Rabbi Akiva said, no, it is not necessary to force her to drink. Don't we need to force her to drink the water only in order to evaluate her fidelity? And isn't she established as having been evaluated when she refuses to drink? Because if she at any point in this process says, I will not drink, she's a Sotah, right? She can't say, I'm no longer a Sotah. That is not in her control anymore. She became a Sotah when she was warned not to seclude herself with a particular man in the presence of 2 witnesses, and then she secluded herself with a man, that same man, for a certain amount of time, and 2 witnesses saw that. Then she became a Sotah. So the only way she's going to become permitted to her husband again is if she drinks the bitter water. If she doesn't drink the bitter water, it's the same as saying, I did it. I committed adultery. Or, even if she's going to not actually come out and admit it, if she won't drink the bitter water, she's never going to become permitted to her husband again. They're going to have to get a divorce, and she won't receive her kasuba payment. So what Rabbi Akiva is saying is, what's the point of making her drink the water? If at any point in the process she says, I won't drink the water, that equals I committed adultery, at least as far as I'm willing to admit I committed adultery in order to accept this divorce without receiving the payment of the marriage contract. So rather, Rabbi Akiva does not say that she would ever be forced to drink it. So how do we interpret Rabbi Akiva's statement that sounds like she's forced to drink it? So rather, Rabbi Akiva's statement should be understood like this. Until the handful is sacrificed, she can retract her decision to drink the bitter water. However, once the handful is sacrificed, she cannot retract her decision to drink. Meaning her decision, like she's not going to actually be forced to drink, but it's going to be assumed that whether she drinks it or not, that if she then doesn't drink it, it's because she's guilty. Now the Gemara asks, but according to your reasoning and explanation of Rabbi Akiva's statement, this explanation itself should pose a difficulty for you. Why can't she retract her decision once the handful is sacrificed? And isn't she established as having been evaluated as soon as she refuses to drink? And the Gemara answers, this is not difficult. This case where she is forced to drink is referring to a situation where she retracts her decision to drink due to fear, as her refusal is not viewed as an admission of guilt. And it is possible that if she drinks, she will be found innocent. She's just freaked out, right? She's freaked out. I mean, she was brought here to this public place. Remember, they untie her hair, they rip her garment. She has to drink this thing in front of everybody. She could be terrified even if she's innocent, right? So if she's innocent and maybe she's rather just not drink it than go through this thing, and maybe she's afraid that the bitter water will hurt her, because she flirted even though she didn't actually commit adultery. She's just freaked out, right? So the fact that she refuses to drink is not an admission of guilt. Right, where she retracts her decision to drink is due to fear, and this refusal is not viewed as an admission of guilt, and it is possible that if she drinks, she will be found innocent. And in that case, where she does not drink, it is referring to a situation where she retracts her decision in a state of good health, meaning she's not freaked out. She just said, you know what, okay, I've taken this far enough. I'm guilty, I'm not going to drink it. And this is what Rabbi Akiva is saying. In any case where she retracts her decision to drink, when she's in a state of good health, when she's not freaked out, so she does not drink at all. So with regard to a Sotah who retracts her decision due to fear, so if she retracts her decision before the handful is sacrificed, when the scroll has not yet been erased, or even if the scroll was already erased, since the priest acted incorrectly when they erased it beforehand, she can retract her decision. Once the handful is sacrificed, in which case the priests acted correctly when they erased the scroll into the water, she cannot retract her decision and she is forced to drink it against her will. And the Gemara asks, now we're on 20a, we're just going to read the first few paragraphs, but I'm almost done. So the statement of Rabbi Akiva is difficult, as it is contradicted by another statement of Rabbi Akiva. There in the first Baraisa, he said that erasure prevents the authorities from compelling the woman to drink the water if she retracted her decision to drink it. And here he says that the sacrifice of the handful prevents the authorities from compelling the woman to drink the water. In other words, according to the first Baraisa, the woman can retract her decision to drink until the scroll is erased. Whereas according to the second Baraisa, she can retract her decision until the handful is sacrificed. So the Gemara responds, there is a dispute between two Tanaim, and they disagree with regard to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. It's not that Rabbi Akiva issued two contradictory opinions, it's that two later sages disagree about what Rabbi Akiva said. And they disagree with regard to what point in time, according to Rabbi Akiva, is the final moment at which a woman can refuse to drink the bitter water without being forced to do so. And a dilemma was raised before the sages. If she initially said, I will not drink, while in a state of good health, and then she retracted her statement and said, I will drink, so what is the law? Does one say that when she said, I will not drink, it is as if she confessed and said, I committed adultery, I am defiled. And since she established herself as defiled, as guilty, now she cannot retract her statement. Or perhaps when she said, I will drink, she revealed her thoughts that it was only due to fear that she will not drink. And the Gemara concludes, Teiku, we're not sure how this is this was never resolved. And Shmuel's father says it is necessary for one to put a bitter substance into the water that the Sotah drinks. And this is the first we're hearing that the bitter water had something other than water, dust from the floor, and ink from these verses. There was also some substance that actually made it taste bitter, because the ink that was made out of a little bit of soot and water has no flavor. The dust that came from the floor has no flavor. So what makes the water actually taste bitter? And the law is they would put a little bit of wormwood in it. Nothing poisonous, nothing that would have any kind of, impact on her health. It would just taste a little bit bitter because the water is in fact referred to as the bitter water. What is the reason for this? It is, as the verse states, and he shall blot them out into the water of bitterness. Numbers 5:23, indicating that they are already bitter before the scroll is erased from that little bit of wormwood that is in the water. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 3. Let's go to some comments and questions. Sharon, my former boss in Lakewood, New Jersey, used to say in a joking way when a woman would extend her hand, my wife would not approve, or else I would run interference and shake her hand in his place, right? Because Sharon understood that her boss, who was an Orthodox Jewish man, would not shake hands with other women who were not his wife. And that other people might not understand. So, we're referring to that discussion they had earlier in the class. And so either he would say, my wife would not approve, or Sharon, his employee, would say, I'll shake hands with her. Very good. The guy had a system worked out. Ifa, I thought the priest avoids touching women because they could be tameh, nida. Would that still be a concern with the Sotah? Very good point. That is another reason. Absolutely, right? It could turn out that perhaps the woman is a nida and doesn't even know it, right? And that she would later find that she had spotted, that she had some bleeding outside of her normal time. And it could be found retroactively that she was a nida at the time that, she touched that priest while she was in the temple. Because you can't enter the temple if you are tameh, but maybe she didn't know that she was tameh. Now, for these instances of unintended impurity that comes into the temple and impure sacrifices that were brought unintentionally, I think we have the teaching elsewhere that the tzitz, right, the front plate of the high priest that he wore every day in the high temple, which says holy unto God, that object atoned for these kinds of sins that were committed unintentionally by priests, by people, by everyone who entered the temple. God understands that we are humans and we make mistakes. But nevertheless, that's one of the reasonings, yes, why men won't touch women. They might be a nida, but then it really just becomes a general policy. Yeah, we don't touch women, who are not related to us, closely related. So I think, it's like that is one of the reasons why that became the policy, but it's not the only reason. Just inappropriate touching, leads to an immodest atmosphere, as it were. Last night, there's like the chief rabbi of Morocco actually gave a talk here in our neighborhood. He's visiting LA right now. He's giving a talk in one of the other Jewish neighborhoods tonight. I wasn't able to attend, but Nina did. And she said there was an aura about that man, and a huge crowd, gathered around. And people wanted to get blessings from him. But he's like a very, very, particular about being appropriate and guarding his eyes. So first of all, he would never seclude himself or even meet, within a crowd, like him and a woman alone, right? If a woman is going to come to him for a blessing, she needs to come, with her father, her husband, her brother, with a chaperone, as it were. And he's just one of those people that's extremely particular about interacting with any woman who's not his wife in that way. So, some people are just extremely careful about that, and he's one of them. All right, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Friday, at the regular Friday time, noon Pacific. And we'll continue with Mishna number 2 here in chapter 3. Have a great night.